at least? Yeah, hey, it works. What do you know? Thanks. Yeah. So, how is everybody? Hopefully better than me. As you can tell, there's not much of my voice. Woke up yesterday and my voice was questionable. I was like, oh, fantastic timing. You know, it always works that way, it seems. There was one year, I think, I got sick. Like the day before I gave a sermon, almost every time I preached. I was like, ah. Sad part is, I'm stubborn enough that I still preach anyway. I could have easily messaged Mark yesterday and been like, hey, you got one in your back pocket? But I didn't. I'm too stubborn for that. When I commit to something, typically I will see it through unless there is something way out of crazy. So another thing that happened this week for me, it was probably the most difficult mentally week at work I've had in a very long time. I don't know. You all know that my job isn't a physical one. It's all mental. But man, sometimes, any of you that have worked customer service jobs understand what I'm talking about. Sometimes all the crazies call at once. And it was all week, constantly. I had a lady that chewed both me and Nicole out for 20 minutes because she canceled her second car and she lost her multi-car discount. Absolutely nothing I can do to help you. Sorry, ma'am. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's been a struggle this week for me, and I'm just going to be honest with you on this. When I got up on Friday, I was like, oh crap, I preach on Sunday. It's been one of those weeks, everybody. It's been one of those weeks. And one of those couple of months probably for me. It's not been an easy one. So Friday, when I was thinking about, so what do I preach on? Because I was failing at the mission that my youth pastor put me on and said, always have a sermon in your back pocket because you never know. Well, I didn't have one in my back pocket. So through praying and thinking on Friday, I finally was like, I had some severe writer's block. So I just opened up the Bible and was like, you know what? Whenever I'm frustrated, I always like to hear Paul yell at the other disciples. So let's open up some Galatians. So we're going to talk about some Galatians today. I think, are you the only one that got that? So we're going to talk about, and I started to wonder too, and I was reading this, and I was like, our choices make a difference. And I was doing some counseling with somebody this week too, or in the last couple of weeks too. And it's been about all that, I've been talking to him about the decisions that he makes. And he only has control over the decisions he makes. So I kind of thought about that when I was reading this. And so here we go. Galatians 1, 6 through 10 is where we're going to start today. And I want you to really pick up. I'm going to try to say this with the emotion because Paul wrote it with emotion, a very frustrated emotion. So don't take this the wrong way. And if I don't portray it completely because my voice is only half here, then bear with me on that, okay? I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one who we preach to you, let him be accused. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a second. So the Galatians, they really went off course with a lot of the stuff that they were getting sucked back into, the pagan type of things, and kind of molding that into their Christianity, which is why Paul is so ticked off here. Understandably so, right? But then I was thinking, we do the same thing, really. We do the same thing. Some of us leave this building and don't remember. Most of us will leave this building today and not remember a word that I said. Sometimes me included. Right? And statistically, that's a fact. And so don't deny it. Now, you might remember that I said that none of you will remember this tomorrow. But hopefully the Spirit will touch someone. But I know it is a reality that some of us are different people outside of this room than what we are inside this room. And do you know who you are? You know who you are? To an extent, I am that person as well. Because I get frustrated. I get angry. There's things this morning when I was getting the kids ready for bed, I couldn't help but think, I can't believe that my kids are treating me like I'm their slave. And it was frustrating to me. Granted, both of them are still at an age where I still have to do almost everything for them, right? But normally mom does a lot of it, and the weight is less on me. But it's a reality there. Like, I get frustrated with those things. And then when I'm working on something else and they get in a fight in the other room, I have to go deal with that too. And it's draining, right? So it's easy for me to fly off the handle and get mad. It would be even easier for me to say words that I shouldn't say, particularly around my kids. And I know many of you have had issues like that. Is that action, do you think that action is pleasing to God? Or are we turning our back on what we know to be true and right? The lady that lost multi-car, the multi-car discount. If I were to go off the handle on her, what good would that do anybody? Right? I understand the industry a lot more than she does. She may not understand completely what's happening there. Unfortunately, the law and percentages hurt her in that situation. And the reason she was frustrated, I understand. because she's actually paying more for one car than she was for two. That's frustrating, but it's the law of percentages. I can't help it. It wasn't significantly more. It's like $5 every 6 months, but still, it was more. But it's important to keep our cool. Now, in this case, Paul was losing his cool because for a legitimate reason. They weren't serving God the way that they should have been, right? And it's okay. I mean, Jesus lost his cool when he was flipping tables for people turning the sanctuary of the synagogue into a place of like a market, more or less. He was not happy about that, and rightfully so. So when it comes to spiritual matters, it's okay to be frustrated with things. But it's how do we go after someone and demoralize them, or are we trying to fix the problem, like the real issue? Because I can tell you, well, at least from a customer service side of things, right? If you lose it, it's done. Okay? You have to keep your cool the whole time. They can be screaming, spitting in your face, all this other stuff. It's hard to do that over the phone, the spitting in your face, but they can be going off the handle. If you lose it, it's over. You lost. And that goes for, and it's not even a competition really, but you lost. You lost that customer, you lost a lot of things. You may lose them anyway, but it's just not easy, guys. When you have a rough week, when you have a rough couple of months, when you have a rough year, sometimes it piles up. And what is it that we are doing? What is it that we are doing that could potentially be causing that? Is it a choice that we made? Or is it just sometimes you have those weeks? We need to be thinking about those so we can correct ourselves, so you don't read Paul and he's calling you foolish. Right? Because anger, when we get emotional about things, that we really don't need to get emotional about, it really impacts things for the negative most of the time. See where I'm going with that? And a lot of times, Nicole asked me this week, how do you keep your cool so easily? I'm like, well, you just can't get emotional about it. And I think this has been learned over time with experience. And two, I'm usually saying a prayer. God, help me keep my cool. But are you doing that? Are you doing that? Like, I can't even tell you how many Facebook arguments I have seen in the past. I don't see too many now because I saw so many of them. Like, I'm just done with this crap. But people losing it at each other over stupid stuff that doesn't matter. Why? Why? We're bringing in, and anybody that says either one of the parties is representative of the Christian faith is lying to themselves. But we try to put one party above the other as far as being holy, and neither one of them is righteous. Neither one. They're all selfish. There's very few people in that Capitol building that are righteous. Very few. I'm not going to say there's none because I don't know their hearts, but there's very few. So why is it that we forget? Why is it that we forget as soon as we leave this room, as soon as we close our Bible when we read it? For those of us that do actually read it, why is it that we forget so quickly what we just read? Or heard? Let's read verse 10. So after he's yelling at them, verse 10, he says, "For am I seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, would I not be a servant of Christ?" So what's Paul saying there? I would argue we need to change our focus. I can't even tell you how many times. So if I'm representing, let's just use the multi-car lady, okay? If I lose it on her, am I showing the grace of God there? No. I'm also not showing a good customer service, but I'm not showing the grace of God there if I just totally lose it and say, "You're dumb." What she doesn't understand, that doesn't make her dumb. Right? And we can explain it to her 15 different ways, and she may not ever understand. I don't know. But if I lose it, I lose my witness. And who am I trying to please? If I'm trying to please God, then the answer is I'm going to have to keep myself together. Right? God doesn't always do that for us. He wants us to have, he wants us to have self-control. And that's actually one of the, if you read later in Galatians, it's actually one of the fruits of the Spirit that's listed, right? Self-control. Unfortunately, in our society, most of us don't have self-control. But if you ask me, there's some denominations that look for things like, you're super spiritual in church, or you speak in tongues and all this other stuff. I think we really need to be looking at who's got the most self-control here. When their kids are flying off the handle and being crazy and not listening, are they doing the same? Or are they getting to the bottom of the issue and being the real parent in the room? And I'm telling you this because I'm guilty of that. I can't even tell you how many times I've yelled at Evan, told him that I'm so angry with him because he does this or that, or just completely ignores everything that I say. He's a 7-year-old. He's going to do that. But there's no reason I need to get